Welcome to this explainer. Okay, think about this for a second. Have you ever wondered how, say, a simple bowl of rice actually transforms into your body's deepest vitality? It's kind of mind-blowing when you really stop to think about it. Today, we're exploring a fascinating physiological framework that's been studied for centuries. We're going to break down that incredibly complex journey from the food sitting on your plate all the way to the very essence of your energy.
We usually just think of digestion as breaking down food. Like we eat, it digests, and a story, right? But it's actually the kickoff to this beautiful, intricate cascade of tissue building. So, how does the food on your plate eventually become your solid bones, your nervous system, or literally your body's defensive shield?
Well, to answer that, we're looking at the principles of Ayurvedic anatomy. Now, this ancient system views the human body a bit differently than we might be used to. It doesn't look at isolated organs. Instead, it sees a continuous flowing network of nourishment. And it's basically built on three main pillars. You've got your 7 fundamental tissues, your functional transport channels, and these highly sensitive vital energy points. Together, the whole shebang holds, supports, and maintains our structural and functional integrity as living human beings.
Let's kick things off with that first pillar, the 7 dhatus, which is all about the journey of nourishment.
So, the word dhatu essentially means that which supports or holds the body together. When we digest food, it first turns into this nutrient essence, which then sequentially feeds our tissues layer by layer. It starts with rasa, that's our plasma, and lymph, which governs hydration. Once that's fully nourished, it passes the baton to feed rakta, our blood, giving us oxygenation. Then, the flow continues right into mamsa, the muscle tissue that literally gives us our physical form. And after that, meda, our fat tissue for insulation and energy. It's this brilliant, domino-like chain reaction of nourishment.
And it doesn't stop there. From fat, the nourishment dives even deeper. It builds asthi, our skeletal system, providing stability. The essence of the bone then goes on to create majja, which is our bone marrow and nervous tissue. And finally, this is the really cool part. We arrive at the 7th and absolutely most refined tissue, shukra. This radiant spark of energy only forms after the previous 6 tissues have been completely, properly nourished.
Now, what's truly fascinating about this final layer, shukra, is that we have to look way beyond its direct translation as just reproductive tissue. It actually represents the absolute essence of all the preceding tissues. We're talking about a comprehensive system governing neuroendocrine coordination, hormonal balance, and even psychological well-being. It's the foundation for something called ojas, which is basically the ultimate marker of your systemic strength and immunity. So if your shukra is depleted, well, you might experience fatigue, lowered immunity, or just feel mentally dull, completely regardless of your reproductive goals.
Okay, so we've got these 7 layers of tissues, but let's talk about the channels and vital points. Basically, the infrastructure of our energy. Here's the thing. Nourishment fundamentally requires movement. You can't just have nutrients sitting there. Enter the srotas. These are the body's dynamic channels. Think of them like an incredibly intricate highway system. Their main job is to transport that nutrient essence straight to the specific dhatus that need it, while simultaneously hauling away the metabolic waste. Honestly, from a modern biomedical perspective, these correlate beautifully with our circulatory pathways, lymphatic drainage, and microvascular systems. And it makes perfect sense, right? If these channels get blocked up or depleted, the nourishment literally stops in its tracks, which is identified as the root cause of systemic disorders.
But these channels don't just float around at random. They actually cross paths, and this brings us to Marma Sharira. There are exactly 107 Marma points in the body. These are brilliantly sensitive anatomical intersections where our physical structures and vital energy completely converge.
So these 107 points are categorized based on the physical structures they sit on. Some of them reside right in the muscles and blood vessels, while others are tucked deep within ligaments, bones, and joints. Because they perfectly blend our physical anatomy with our energetic pathways, any disturbance at these specific intersections actually helps practitioners diagnose imbalances deep within the body. It's almost like a diagnostic roadmap.
At this point, you might be thinking, okay, but how does a nutrient actually know where to go and how to transform? Let's look at the irrigation metaphor to see how this nourishment flows. The ancient texts use these really fascinating theories, called nyayas, to explain tissue metabolism using real-world metaphors. The first one is the Kshira Dhati theory, or the law of complete transformation. It basically suggests that just as milk sequentially ferments and transforms entirely into curd, one tissue completely transforms into the next. But then we have a second theory, the Kedari Kulya theory, or the law of transportation.
This one compares the body to an agricultural field. Just as water from a main source flows smoothly through a network of irrigation trenches to feed different crops, the nutrient essence flows through our body's channels to water our various tissues. And then we have this truly beautiful metaphor, the Kale-Kapota theory, which is the law of selective uptake. Picture a central pile of grain, and a flock of pigeons flying in from all different directions. Each pigeon flies up to the pile, picks out only the specific type of grain it needs, and carries it back to its own nest. In exactly the same way, every specific tissue in our body has its own receptors and enzymes. When that nutrient essence arrives, the tissue selectively extracts only the specific biochemical particles it needs to build itself and totally ignores the rest. Pretty amazing, right? So how fast is all of this happening? Well, the Ik-Kala theory steps in here and states that, sure, we can break these mechanisms down into steps for a textbook, but in a living, breathing body, they are actually happening all at the exact same time. Your body is constantly, in real time, transforming, transporting, and selectively absorbing nutrients across all 7 tissue layers simultaneously. It's constantly maintaining the state of dynamic metabolic equilibrium. Let's take a quick step back and summarize this entire system, just tying it all together. You can think of it much like a giant set of interlocking gears. First up, your digestive fire breaks down your food to sequentially feed those 7 dhatus, ultimately culminating in your deepest vitality. Second, the scrotus act as your transportation highway, making sure those nutrients continuously flow to exactly where they're needed, while simultaneously clearing out the junk. And third, those 107 marma points act as the critical intersections and regulatory switches, ensuring your life energy flows smoothly through the whole physical structure.
Now let's look at the balance for life and why this centuries-old framework still matters so much to us today.
It matters because it completely reframes how we view our own health. True immunity, a stable mood, actual physical resilience, these things don't just come from a quick fix, right? They are the end result of deep, balanced nourishment. When our tissues are fed sequentially, when our transport channels are completely clear of obstructions, and when our vital points are harmonized, the inevitable result is robust health. It really shows us that treating a symptom often means we need to look upstream at the core metabolic processes that build our very structure.
In fact, the foundational texts sum this up perfectly with a really comprehensive definition of health. They state that a healthy person is not merely someone who lacks disease. No, a healthy person is one who has balanced functional forces, a strong and balanced digestive fire, well-formed and fully nourished tissues, properly functioning waste removal, and, this is absolutely crucial, a blissful mind, soul, and senses. It really is the ultimate integration of body and mind.
Which leaves us with a pretty big question to reflect on. Knowing that literally every single meal you eat is the start of this amazing sequential journey that builds your nervous system and your immunity, what steps will you take today to ensure you're truly nourishing your deepest vitality? Seriously, think about it. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I absolutely can't wait to explore more fascinating systems with you next time.